Mino Pajashik, welcome. Welcome to Indigital Insights. Monique Manatch, Indigenous Kitikanik Anishinabek and Dojiba. My name is Monique Manatch, and I'm a member of Algonquins of Barrier Lake. And today we have the great fortune to speak with Archer Pechawis. And I have to admit, I've been looking forward to this talk. There's so many questions I want to ask you. But I'd like you, if you could, just introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about yourself.
Tanse Kagyo, Archer Pechawis and Sikasun, Mistawasis Nêhiyawak, Kiochiwak, Nawagamaganak, Mina, Ochinia, Alert Bay, BC. I was born in Alert Bay, BC on Kwakwagi territory. I am a member of Mistawasis Nêhiyawak, which is a Plains Cree reserve in Saskatchewan, um, which is where a lot of my family live to this day. And I currently reside in Toronto, where I am a performance and media artist. And I'm also a professor at York University, where I teach performance art, First Nations theater, and interactive stage.
Oh, that sounds amazing. That
That's
is
the best
so,
gig ever.
yeah, yeah. What's your curriculum like? What sorts of things do you teach?
Whatever the hell I feel like doing. Being a professor is amazing. I mean, you could just walk in and just like, I do this all the time. If it's a nice day, I'll be like, everybody outside, we're gonna go sit in the grass and talk. Whatever. You just do whatever you feel. And, I teach them the history and I emphasize Indigenous work. So I show them what I think are some of the canonical pieces in the history. But mostly what I try to do is to help them respect their own vision. Just get
You
them
get
to
a lot of
trust.
Indigenous students?
No, no, York is very diverse, but not when it comes to Indigenous people. I'm the only Indigenous faculty in the department, he said with his eyebrows raised as high as it went. Yeah, so that's kind of a problem. There's, to the best of my knowledge, two Indigenous students in our entire faculty as well, like in our department. Um, so that's highly problematic. But we're working on it. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, as the saying goes. Um, but I really do like my job. I love teaching, and the funny thing is when I was applying for the job, people were saying, "Oh, if you get into academia, you'll stop making work." Well, I've been at York for 3 years. I've made more work in the last 3 years than I made in the previous 10. So I don't think that's the problem that people suggested it might be. I think for some people it would be true, but a third of my job is research, which in my case is producing art or doing research, either one. So it's working for me.
What kind of work are you producing?
Oh, Archer's wacky performance art pieces. The last piece we did, I worked with my friend Ian Goodtimes, who's a professional musician. He put together a revolving cast of musicians to play music behind me while I did a performance, where the performance was that I was going to unearth one of the underground streams in downtown Toronto using a spoon.
Is that online anywhere? Can we get images of that?
I've got the video. I haven't had the bandwidth to go. Like my last three big performances, like I do usually one big performance a year plus little ones, right? And the last three, I've got the raw video, but I just haven't had the bandwidth to go and cut it down. Like, blah 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 blah. So eventually that stuff will be online, but it isn't at the moment. Um, so it turned into a meditation on water and water and indigenous rights and water and human rights and water and what it means to us and all those good things. And the year before that, I did a performance where I did a workshop on how to catch rats, and how to skin them, gut them, and cook them. So downtown Toronto, I was fishing down a sewer grate with a piece of cheese and a fishing hook, trying to catch a rat. And my wife Giselle, made the pithy observation, as she is prone to do. Half the audience was performance artists because it was a performance art festival, and the other half weren't. And she said all the performance artists wanted you to catch the rat, and the rest of us did not. But I mean, I had a stove, frying pan, oil. Like I was like, I was ready to catch the rat, kill it, gut it, skin it, cook it, and offer it to the audience. So, so the whole thing was about climate change and the Great Extinction that we're a part of. Um, and my only regret about the performance, because I thought it went very well, was that at one point a woman said, "Well, why catch rats when there's so many squirrels?" And I can't remember how I answered her, but I realized the next day what I should have said was, "That's what we thought about the buffalo." But I didn't say that. Boo. The French call
That's
that l'esprit d'escalier, the spirit of the stairway, where you think of your witty response when it's too late to use it. Yeah,
yeah. That happens to me all the time. That
yeah,
and
happens to
remembering
everybody.
things, anything. That's amazing. I love that. It's such not just interesting. It's a real way to engage with the urban center. What some people are, in a situation where they're looking at, and also um, what we're coming to. You know, like that. It really has that apocalyptic edge to it, especially in Toronto. I grew up in Toronto, and I saw them covering up creeks and turning them into sewers. Beautiful creeks we used to play with. There were tadpoles, there were fish, there were all these things. Next thing you know, they're all cemented over and it's gray water, you know, out in the suburbs. So downtown always kind of freaked me out because you never knew what was underneath there.
It's true.
What, I know you do a lot of digital work. You'd been doing a lot of digital work in the past. Are you still doing that?
Oh yeah. I'm working on. I have a long term project. Long term in the sense that I've been working on it for 35 years. It's just ongoing iterations of my digital drum project. So I have the latest iteration is in process. It'll take me another couple of years to get it up on its feet. Um, and this one, the first digital drum piece was talking to elders, and this one's talking to the youth and asking the youth for their opinions on things. So that's a thumbnail of what that is. Plus, we're making. I wonder if I should keep this one secret. We're working on an electric jingle dress. That's all I'm going to say.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, I'm working with Dr. Susan Blight from OCAD on that. OCAD U, I should say,
Yeah,
and Dr. Joel Ong, who's a member of faculty at York. So we're building some stuff.
that sounds amazing. My niece goes to OCAD.
Nice.
Proud of her. Yeah, yeah, she's pretty amazing. But that sounds really cool. I'd like to, yeah, I'll have to
It's gonna be
keep
banging.
updated. That's excellent. And what were the things that you were hearing from the elders when you were doing the digital drum, or from the youth for that matter?
Well,
Good to
I
hear.
haven't done the youth interviews yet. The elders talked a lot about how the use of technology does not make something untraditional or non-traditional. Like we've always been technology users. Like a hand drum, a wood frame moose hide hand drum is a technological innovation. So it really depends on how you look at technology, right? When you think about what it takes to make a drum and the kind of knowledge that you need to have to do that work and to make a good, solid, good sounding drum, there's a lot of technological knowledge in there, right? You have to be able to get a moose. You have to know how to skin the moose, how to cure the hide. You have to know which kind of tree to use. You have to know how to cut the tree down safely. You have to know how to mill the tree so you get the wood that you need. How to cure the wood. I mean, there's a lot of technology in there. So I talk to my students about that a lot too. About what do we mean when we say technology? I mean, a box of wooden matches is technology, right? And there's no essential difference between a box of wooden matches and a MacBook Pro. I mean, they're just technological innovations. In fact, your box of
Each of-
matches is more likely to work every time.
yeah, got that right.
I really shouldn't
Let's
say that. My MacBook Pro is actually really reliable. I shouldn't. I'm using it right now. I shouldn't diss my machinery. I love you, MacBook Pro. Everything is good. Everything is good.
yeah,
I didn't mean it. Don't take it personally.
didn't know. I'm on
Um,
a Air Mac or MacBook Pro or something.
so I really try to encourage my students to expand upon, to honor the way they see the world first, but also to expand upon the unique and individual way that they see the world. Like that's a huge part of what I do. It's about seeing. It's about perceiving. It's about perception, and to honor your own perception, because we are told from the time we're little that the way we see the world is wrong. And, we get these constant messaging that what we're doing is wrong, what we see is wrong, how we perceive the world is wrong. And I'm a big believer in magic. I'm a big believer in. I don't believe in coincidence. I think everything happens for a reason, um, which is a difficult philosophical or spiritual path, right? Because hard things happen, and if you really believe everything happens for a reason, then you have to roll with that, which can be a very difficult thing to do. So I've got all these different spiritual and philosophical things that I think are important. Those are the things that I try to imbue my lessons with. So it's like, oh, here's the history of performance art. Here's Carolee Schneemann putting a roll of paper in her vagina and unrolling it in the middle of a performance naked. It's like like that stuff's all super important, and it's important to have a grasp of that history, but also the context that history provides, right? Um, and at least once a semester, frequently more, at least once a semester, one of my students will do a performance that will just blow my mind. Like, like work that belongs, that on a level that belongs in a professional, like a world class professional festival. Like just these amazing pieces that just make this. My students make me cry. That happens. They're. I read this thing online where someone was saying, if you're older than 40, you should have a youth mentor, not a mentee. You should have a youth mentor, someone who is young mentoring you. And I was like, wow, that's good. That's really good. And that's how I view my students. They're my mentors. They teach me. They keep my brain flexible, because I'm turning into an old guy, right? It's like, and I just want to see the world in a certain way, and I don't want to think about anything else. And they're constantly forcing me to go, well, what about this, Archer? I'm like, oh, well, I hadn't thought about that. Thank you. So that's precious. That's a precious thing.
And it's not just about the new technology, which I have a hard time keeping up with, which is ironic considering I run a media arts organization. But it's also about not just about how they engage with the technology, but also how they engage with their environment alongside the technology and how they incorporate that. Like I always say with my son, he was 3 and he had a mouse, and the mouse, like playing on computer, the mouse was bigger than his hand. So he was just born into it, just part of his environment. I have to adapt, and the older I get, the harder it is to adapt.
I just I'm just trying to stay flexible. You know, just in the way I think, in the way I perceive. To be open to, just to be open. Period. Not Doesn't matter what you're open to, as long as just to be open and ready to accept. Right. Um, I mean, there's beautiful lessons every day. It's just a question of seeing them and then accepting them. So that's part of the
Absolutely.
curriculum. That's part of my curriculum as well. It's like, so all these things are part of what I teach in different ways. Oh, you'll love this. So um, I've really gotten into traditional drumming and singing. So that's a big part of my practice, and I do a lot of singing. Every day I'm at York, I pick a public spot and I drum and sing. I do a song, right? And I started doing it because I found the psychic energy at York really weird. I found York. I just found the psychic vibe of the place really bizarre. So I decided to start doing that as a way of claiming space in that milieu. Um, but it's become a favorite part of my practice because I'm not a huge guy, but I'm a pretty big guy, and I've got a really big voice and a really loud drum, and I I play at 11, right? Like it's like pedal to the floor. So whenever I'm drumming and singing it on campus, I'm at 11, right? And Monique, the vast majority of the students walk by like this, pretending they don't see me. It's hilarious. It's like one of the funniest things. And it just like, and it never gets old for me. Like every day I do it and they pretend I'm not there. I'm just like, this is amazing. This is amazing and hilarious. But then I've had opposite experiences too. Like once, literally every day I missed in 3 years. I've missed one day drumming and singing at York. One day, right? And I sang twice the next day to make up for it. So one time I was my favorite spot's by the Starbucks in the arts building because there's always people there, right? And I'm banging away on my drum and singing, and this beautiful native woman gets up. I hadn't seen her and starts jingle dancing. I mean, she didn't have regalia, but I mean, she starts dancing, right? And I was like, this is the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. Okay, not maybe not the coolest thing that ever happened to me, but top five. So so you have those moments as well, right?
And yet, if somebody was standing there rapping or if they were doing, some other kind of performance art, it wouldn't be that reaction wouldn't happen. I don't think anyway.
They're afraid of getting involved. They're because they don't know what is going to be expected of them, right? Like, do they have to dance? Do they have to sing? Right? So there's ignorance in the sense of not knowing about a thing, right? So there's ignorance about expectation. Am I going to have to do something? And I think, and I've run this by my students, and they're all like, "Yep, yep, that's why." So I get it. I get intimidated by things as well, and if something's intimidated to me, I do my best to avoid it.
Yeah.
It's just kind of the way humans are. But I'm actually going to I'm going to make some artwork. I want to make a video where I'm drumming and singing, and the students are all steadfastly doing their best to pretend I'm not there. So there's some rich material there.
You wonder about the consequences of those actions too. What else are they not seeing? Like, don't see me. Like, what else are they not seeing in their lives?
Well, there's that, but I think a more pressing question is what we aren't seeing in our lives because they're young. So they're seeing the world in a whole different way than we are. I mean, we're making way more assumptions than they are, right? Like they're actually seeing things, whereas we're walking through the world going, "Oh, I know how this works." It's like, no, we don't. No, we don't. We don't know how it works. We just think we do.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had experience with that. Have you with this? Yeah.
Yeah, was it the same context? Exactly.
The older I get, the more context is becomes clearer that context is a priority.
It's pretty crucial.
Yeah,
It's pretty crucial.
absolutely. Absolutely. That's amazing. I love that. I wish somebody would do that at Carleton. That would be great. We have some faculty. I'm going to Carleton, hopefully to graduate soon, fingers crossed and all that, because I keep postponing my defense for various reasons, but I told myself by December. But the whole time, I mean, I'm in anthropology, so there aren't really that, there's one Indigenous prof in anthropology. They have a department. It's a little bit, it has an odd vibe. There are, yeah, Carleton also has that sort of forward facing. Oh yes, we're very, engaged with our Indigenous community. However, if you look behind the facade, um, there are challenges.
If you look behind the facade, there's a bunch of two by fours holding it up.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, two by fours which have been clear cut from our territory. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's tough.
yeah.
It comes with a lot of challenges. Everything isn't hunky dory at York any more than it is anywhere else. But that's how it is.
Hmm.
That's how it is.
Hmm.
That's the reality of the situation. So you can accept it or not, right? You can roll with it or you can. Yeah. Anyway, so all that stuff's happening. I'm really interested. I'm playing more music all the time now, and I'm looking for ways to incorporate that into my practice. Um, I just want to play my drum and play my guitar and sing. That's those are the things that are pulling me through the universe right now. And and I've got all these projects, the ones I was talking about, plus a bunch of other ones, and they're all going, "Hey Archer, we kind of need your attention over here." So I'm like, "Oh yeah, right, yeah, I'm coming." Uh, so I'm playing that game as well. Um,
When you were saying the elders are talking about the technology, uh, you know, I've heard both sides of the story. One saying that's not our way, we shouldn't be doing that. If you record an elder, you're taking away from you're creating a division between them and the youth, which is our ancestral way of knowledge transference. And then on the other hand, I'm man, if I could hear my grandmother's voice again, if I could hear her tell a story, if I could see her tell a story, see that tilt of the head, see that twinkle in the eye, see those hand movements. I mean, writing it down, why is writing it down not considered technology when videotaping brings us so much more nuance and information? Have you seen both of those sides?
I was doing a drum performance in Winnipeg at the Winnipeg Art Gallery, and I was doing a talk back afterwards, and I can't remember what I was talking about. I was talking about the ancestors and what they thought of the work I do, and my I used to I used to say, well, Numashumpan, my deceased grandfather, uh, Thomas John Pechawis, if he saw my laptop, he would go, "Oh, that's his drum," right? And I was talking like this, and a friend of mine actually, Ozzy, says, "Well, Archer, I got to say that I don't think the ancestors like what you're doing with this, putting technology in a drum, right?" Monique, it made me so happy. It made me so happy. I'd been waiting for someone to take that line with me, right? And I don't even remember how I responded. I was just like, "Thanks, Ozzy." I've been waiting for someone to stand up and go, "No, Archer, what you're doing is wrong. It's bad. It's blah 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 blah." Because as long as someone's doing that, you're doing the right thing. You're doing your job correctly, right? We're artists. If everyone agrees with everything we do, we're doing something terribly, terribly wrong.
Absolutely. That makes that I like that now because we get some of that sometimes, and maybe I'm taken aback. But you're right. If people aren't questioning, then yeah, we're just following the flow, and we're not moving anything forward.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. What do you think about? Okay, so you take it a step forward and you start looking at AI and how AI interacts or engages with culture. How do you see that impacting?
We being myself and Jason Lewis and Nolani Arista and Dr. Suzanne Kite wrote a collaborative essay called "Making Kin with the Machines," which gets republished like every 6 months. People really love this essay, and I talked about wanting to take an AI home back to the res and and take it into ceremony, like take it into the sweat lodge, right? And teach it our language and just make kin. So I had a long conversation with Keith Goulet. He's one of our language keepers. He's one of our elders, and I said, so first off, would we consider this animate or inanimate, right? So we talked about that for a while. And how would we refer to this being? Like how would we address this being? And he got super eldery on me and wouldn't answer the question, right? Like directly, like he started really going around it. I was like, okay, we're going to go around it for a while. You know how elders do, right? And eventually he said, well, we would address it as a younger sibling. We would address it as a younger sibling. I was like, huh, okay, cool, cool. But I was really hoping to to outrage people at the thought of taking AI into the sweat lodge. I was really hoping to get some like hate mail about that. You know, like how dare you, Archer Pechawis? Who do you think you are? Blah blah blah. Hasn't happened yet. I guess the haters haven't read the article, read
Not
the
yet.
essay. So
I
give it
love
some
that.
time. Give it some time.
I
But yeah,
like that idea of a younger sibling. Like it's
right?
animate.
Yeah,
So the AI is and but the thing is, we did this research project around how um, algorithms are how they impact Indigenous, especially people on social media,
right,
because of the negative definitions or negative to Indigenous definitions in the annotations.
right,
So, I mean, take a word like settler.
right.
The definition used in the mainstream and the definition or the connotation in the Indigenous community are poles apart.
They are. They are.
So, if you have an algorithm or an AI using an algorithm which are based on these and there are billions of definitions. I mean, unless you create something that is specifically defined within the Indigenous community.
Yep.
But how do we deal with the impact of how algorithms and AI impact us now? Like, how do we
Right.
deal with that?
Right. We have a magazine in the bathroom. You know, the bathroom, you got your stack of magazines, right? And the title of the magazine is, or the title of the main title of the magazine, which is called Brick, is Starve the Algorithm. It's like, huh? Well, you'd have to lock yourself in a closet for a year or two to do that, seeing the algorithms feed on practically everything we do. But it's an interesting thought. It's an interesting thought. Starve the algorithm. Yeah, that's got potential. That's got potential. Um, everything goes back to Karl Marx, and Karl Marx famously said that we have to seize the means of production, right? So what I've been talking about with my smarty pants friends, my smarty pants indigenous friends, is creating our own AIs, like indigenous, AIs based in indigenous worldview, right? Now, that's much easier said than done. Like creating AI is a extremely labor and cost intensive process. But these are the things we talk about, right? I mean, I'm part of a large um, indigenous uh, led initiative into AI called Abundant Intelligences, which is a huge project. Lots and lots and lots of natives from all over the world working on our approach to AI. So we just got started. We're just getting started now. But you know, check me in a couple of years and we'll see where we're at with that. Should be interesting.
Absolutely. That would be amazing. And I love the idea of part of that process is taking that AI into ceremony, teaching it the language. There are a lot of language apps and language projects going on now. And what if all of that, because when you look at the definitions within the indigenous, like if you teach it, say, Algonquin, and those definitions would be so much different. I wonder, and if you included all as many nations as you can, it would be fascinating to see what came out of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think if we taught AI Cree, for example, Plains Cree,
Yeah.
uh, Nêhiyawak, they would be the most effective teachers we could have, right? So it would be a way of revitalizing language is to teach our, but also we would, by teaching AI our indigenous languages, we would be affecting the way they perceive, right? We would be hopefully indigenizing them to a certain degree by doing that, so it's also a subversive act. Mind you, most of the things we do as indigenous people are subversive acts. You know, it's just like just being alive. Are just being alive is a subversive act when you're an indigenous person, right?
Just by teaching our children. So I wonder, because the languages are so locative, if you have more than one language being taught to the AI, I wonder how that would impact the perspective because of that connection. If they were like, I almost see them as feelers, in the Plains Cree territory, in the Algonquin territory, in the Haida territory, and Mi'kmaq, like if they had all these like tangible connections to the land through the language. I wonder if it could all be harmonized or if we're going to give it some sort of, if we're going to break it.
And if we broke it, what would that look like? Like, what would you have then, right? That's an interesting line of thought right there. Yeah, once you go down the rabbit hole on this, it's like you can just keep going, right? And that's fine. Um, I'm tremendously optimistic, Monique. Tremendously, like despite despite all evidence to the contrary, I have tremendous optimism and faith in how things are going to go and what's going to happen to us as a species, what's going to happen to us as Indigenous folk, and all those things. It's just like no doubt it's going to get kind of crunchy between here and utopia, but I have a good feeling. I have a good feeling, which I can't logically back up, and I'm not even going to attempt to. It's just it's feeling. It's feeling. It's faith. I think the word is.
Do you have specific knowledge transference protocols that you follow?
Um, I just try to um, pay attention to what the elders tell me and what to do and what not to do. And I've gone against that. Like I had an idea for a project, and I thought it was just the coolest thing ever. So I went to an elder, did tobacco and money, and said, "This is the project I want to do." And the elder was like, "Don't do this. You don't know what you're messing around with. I wish I could tell you how. I wish I could explain this to you in Creed, but I'm just take my word for it. Don't do this project." And I was like, "Okay, thank you." And I went home, and of course I was like, "Nah, this is the coolest thing ever. I'm going to build it." So I started building it, and all this terrible shit started happening. Right? I was like, "Oh, I guess I should have listened to like." Why did I go to an elder and give them tobacco to completely ignore everything they just said to me? Because I'm kind of an idiot. So I had to get the hard lesson. So I got the hard lesson, and I destroyed the files. I took everything I've been working on and I deleted everything. I was like, okay, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I won't do it again. So really valuable lessons there for me, right? It's like if you know the protocol, then you're bound to obey, not obey it, but to adhere to it and to follow it, right? Um, so as much as possible, I try to do that. I try to adhere to what my understandings of traditional protocol around different things are. Um, sometimes in my ignorance, I will not do that, and later I'll have to do some process around that. But that's also our job. Our job is to go and to. It's like, what happens if we take this and this and put them together? Like chocolate and peanut butter. Who knew, right? I just invented something, chocolate and peanut butter. Um, Sometimes it's charcoal and kerosene, and it's just not that good to eat. You know, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose, right? It's all a big experiment. But as long as we're in the lab doing those experiments, then majority good, to my mind, majority good, right?
So a lot of your students are non-Indig. How do you find their approach to this sort of thing?
Nobody has yet. Well, I've had students come up to me and say, "I want to do X," and I'll be like, "You can't do X. You can't. Not at York. No, you can't kill a cat as part of a performance at York. Like that's no. Like no, 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 darling student. If you kill a cat in a performance, you will probably go to jail. That's against the law in North America, like in Canada, in the States, probably even in Mexico. It's like, she's like, well, maybe I'll go back to China for that one. I'm like, I can't speak to that. Never been to China. Just don't, please don't kill any animals for a performance here at York. So, as an example, now that's one of the more extreme examples, right? Right. But also,
Wow.
but I give them a big speech at the beginning of each semester. It's like, these are the thou shalt nots at York. Thou shalt not cut yourself. Thou shalt not cut other people. Thou shalt not do anything involving blood, bodily fluids of any kind. Any bodily excretions are not allowed. Explosives, firearms, sharp things, dangerous things, cutting tools. No, 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 no. I give them the whole. I have to read them the riot act, right? And then at the end of it, I say, if you feel this is hampering your creativity, there are lots of spaces in downtown Toronto where people are encouraged to do crazy things like that. And by all means, if whatever you need to do to express yourself creatively, I encourage you to follow your muse, right? Just don't follow your muse down that path here at York. I really like my job and I want to keep it. I got called to the dean's office about the cat thing.
Holy cow. They were insisting on doing the cat thing. What? You know what? I always say don't ask why, it's the road to madness, but you got to wonder what's up with that.
Artists have their visions.
But it's so mean.
Well, the artist in question made a valid point saying, well, we kill billions of animals every year for food.
But not for performance or entertainment,
Well, not usually, um,
not legally.
not legally, but but she had a point, right? She had a point there. Um, I actually think it was, I think it was about ambition and notoriety.
I have heard of artists doing that only with other things for that reason in class, more along the bodily fluid thing than
Right.
the hurting
Well,
things
well,
thing.
then she did a performance. She wasn't one of my students. I was just she really liked me, so she would come to me for advice, right? So she didn't do the cat thing, but the next thing she did was a performance that involved all of her bodily excretions. Um,
Oh,
it was actually a great performance. It was a really good performance. Um, but she's not one of my students, so I was just like, do what you want. You're not my student. Like,
carry on.
carry on, do your thing.
Yee. I never I don't understand that curiosity, but okay. Other people want to go down that, explore that path publicly.
And we need those people.
Yeah, if only to mortify us.
There always has to be someone who says, well, how do we know what's in those dark woods? I'm going to go into the dark woods and find out for myself. It's like, okay, here's some pemmican. Hope you come back. Yeah, just don't do that on campus. Stay out of the dark woods on campus.
I think maybe we were more likely to go through ceremony than to enter the dark woods like that. It seems to me,
Well, I
or it
mean,
was a different approach, perspective, environment.
I mean, ceremony kind of is the dark woods.
Yeah, yeah, but it's there. Um, there's no health risk. Well, you wouldn't think there was, but not like that. At
Yeah, fair, fair.
least you would hope not. Not supposed to be,
there's,
really.
there's not supposed to be famous last words. I heard this was perfectly safe. It's like, really?
it's all good. Come on in.
And there's a person who told you that's still alive.
Yeah, well, that's or free, not necessarily in jail.
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
You wonder about that, eh? Like when you combine technology and ceremony, what happens then?
Well, this is the whole AI in the sweat lodge thing, right? Um, I
What if you reverse that and you have ceremony like not on well online, or if you have it like where it's not, you know, like if you're on Zoom in the sweat lodge, I don't know. There was a time when they couldn't even show smudging. I remember there was this one filmmaker, and they wanted to cut out everything that had anything to do with smudging
yeah,
in her film. And she was like, "This is an integral part of what the film is about."
yeah. The film was called Smudge. Um,
Yeah, pretty much.
well, I've seen, as have you, um, over the last decade, especially, a real loosening around that stuff, right? But I think also a lot of the secrecy around ceremony was really, that just came out of the potlatch laws, right?
Yeah,
We had to be secretive because the RCP would show up and take us all the way to jail, right?
yeah,
So there's that. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely, it was the same. Yeah, it was the same in. Well, my families are from Rapid Lake, Barrier Lake, and which was only started as a reserve in '61.
right,
But prior to that, my grandmother was from Kittigon-Zibi,
right.
and so all of that, the drumming, the anything, the storytelling, everything, um, had to be gathering. Any kind of gathering, had to be done at night in the winter. Hopefully the Indian agent or the priest or the RCMP didn't show up.
Yep,
You know,
yep, exactly.
so, and even yeah. So, but the idea of how I don't want to say intrusive, but how deep that partnership goes with our culture, with our ceremony, with our sacred. Because I had a conference in 2019, and two things came out of that conference. One, there were people there saying some things just should never go online.
Right,
And the second thing being around more about intellectual property, in that because we were looking at creating this, we're still working on this directory, this kind of repository. And they were saying just show a thumbprint or a trailer. And then if people are interested in the work, they can get in touch with that artist and create a relationship with
Yep.
that artist, and then they can decide what to do, how they want to share the work.
Well, cultural IP is a huge, big deal, right? It's a huge, big deal, and rightly so. Um, I don't worry about I don't worry about people ripping off my work because it's so specific. Also, if someone ripped off my work, wouldn't take longer than 15 minutes for someone to say, "That's what Archer does." Are you ripping off Archer's thing? Because that's his thing. That's what he does. He's been doing that since the 90s, right? So there's that. And in fact, if someone came to me and said, "I want to do the kind of work you do, can you show me how you do it?" I'd be like, "Damn right," because time's coming where I'm going to be too damn old for this, and it's not that far off. So if you want to become my apprentice and learn how to do all this stuff, excellent. Yeah, so I don't worry about my cultural IP in that sense. Things like the articles I write; those are always covered by by copyright, so I don't worry about that. But our cultural IP, I'm still very much in the old school around a lot of things shouldn't be shown. Like I watched a film quite recently at Hot Dogs, and they actually had a shot from the western, like the camera was at the western door looking out the door of the lodge, and I was like, I got to get the fuck out of this theater, right? And my I was like, that's it, that's all there is. It's okay, you can stay, right? So I was like, okay, I'll stay, but like, no, 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 we don't, no, we don't show images of our ceremonies. We don't do that. That's not a thing. Um, and apparently the film was cut a lot because before there was much more explicit stuff around ceremony. Um, so yeah, I still have a lot of that old school "thou shalt not," right? But that's how I was raised. I was raised that you don't even discuss ceremony outside of the community, right? And you certainly, the idea of taking images of it was just incomprehensible. It was incomprehensible. Like, what? Who would do such a thing, and to what purpose? Like, why would you do that? Um, and I think there's a lot of value in that old school protectionist mindset. It's like, as far as I'm concerned, what happens at the Sundance stays at the Sundance. You know, and I was at a Sundance, and people who I thought should know better had their cell phones out recording the sacred clown at the end, right? I was just like, okay, it's not my place to go up and to scold you about this. That's not my place. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. But inside I was like, I was wagging the big finger, right? Those big foam fingers from sporting events. I had one of those. Like, no, 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 no. No, you don't. No, native. No.
Yeah, it's worse when it's our own. I do openings and closings and different things around Ottawa, and how many times I have stopped and said, "Please put your phones away." I mean, but these aren't necessarily indig. These are, government types or other people who think it's fine to, you know, um, some elders I've spoken to, it's okay, to film the opening or film the closing or film the prayer. I don't feel comfortable with that.
Yep.
I don't know what that is about that, but I don't think so.
No, I think that's correct. I think that's correct. But that's our generation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I get the whole my elder. He's a great guy. They say you can only pass the tobacco with your left hand,
Yeah,
and he's like, "Well, what if you don't have a left hand?"
right. Then I think you get a pass.
Then I think, yeah, then you would use, or he
Or
says,
either that or you use your left foot.
oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess, well, he had a terrible accident when he was a few years younger. He'd fallen. He was a mason, and he had fallen. I don't know how many feet. I can't remember. He told me, but but then his whole left side, his left arm was paralyzed.
Right.
And I told him he'd never use it again. Eventually, he's got full use of it.
Right.
But, that's why he's like, well, wait a minute,
Yep. How
And
about?
he also says the creator can hear you whether you're standing, sitting, or laying down.
Yeah.
Which when I'm in a group of Indigenous people, I'll say that. But honestly, when I'm in a group of government types, I
I
think they should
I
stand.
think that I agree with you. I'm a strong believer in culturally specific teaching. Right? If you're in a room full of Indians, let her rip. If you're not, keep it zipped.
I'm going to remember
Like
that.
that you can have that. That was a freestyle.
I appreciate it. Yeah, as always, it's a real pleasure to talk to you. I learn a lot and I laugh a lot, and I walk away with my mind sort of a little bit, more open, whether I like it or not.
Mm, that's really nice talking to you, Monique. Really nice.
You too.